we've never spoken about 2012 in public, certainly not on record.
We were so idealistic and we were so dedicated to like the roots of it and the belief of it. In the living room, we got all of George's records and we laid them all out on the floor like a kind of mosaic. We were like, they'll play, we'll get them. And that was how we did it.
It was a very, very tricky situation behind the scenes. And yeah, all of this stuff was going on while we were trying to make sure that we could just run this festival.
And I'm sure that anybody who's listening to this who's an event management professional is like kind of, you know,
head in hands.
Head in hands.
As I have. I'm starting to feel anxious now.
I'm starting to get a dry. Yeah, I got.
Yeah, I'm just
this is
bringing it back,
reliving it. Yeah.
My first guests on All Gone Wrong are people I've known a long time: Alex Benson and George Hull, founders of Bloc. For some of you listening, Bloc was probably a fixture of your year, a cult institution that at its peak saw fans from across the globe loyally sending in photos of the Bloc logo tattooed on various body parts. For others, it's a name you likely know mostly for what went wrong. In 2012, they were at the centre of one of the most high-profile festival collapses in UK history. It was an operational nightmare of overcrowding and logistical failure that resulted in a total evacuation on opening night. The London Evening Standard headline was simple: worst festival ever. In part one, we track the rise. The story starts with 100 capacity raves in the Norfolk backwaters and evolves into what became the gold standard for UK electronic music. For 3 years, they found a surreal, perfect home at Butlins. It was a wild success, thousands of ravers descending on a traditional British holiday camp, but by the end of that third sold-out year, the high-octane energy of the festival had pushed the venue to its limit. We look at those early DIY years and the moment when, at the very peak of their power, they were diplomatically shown the side door by Butlins management. It was this sudden lack of a home that forced a leap of faith into a new, ambitious London location, a move that would change everything. This is the first time Alex and George have spoken about any of this on record. I asked George why now. His answer was simple, and you'll hear it in a minute. We start with the 2027 return and how that came about.
The reunion party almost happened by accident. It was merely an idea or a conversation between Alex and I, just in a car in a traffic jam a few weeks ago. And then we have this project which we're working on, which many people probably do know about, which is manufacturing modular buildings and kind of clever imported space solutions from Asia, selling them in the UK and Europe. You know, it's a big project, and we're doing this at this stage in our career. But the reason why the party happened was that we were trying to promote those new products. We're trying to encourage people to buy studio spaces and containers for their homes. And in the process of doing that, we were asked to do an interview with RA because it seemed such a surprising departure for people who ran, 10 or so years of, 20 years really of clubs and raves and festivals, to suddenly be promoting these products. So they asked us, it's a kind of a story. It's like, how did you get here? So in this interview, we explained the progression, which we'll probably go into later, from, raves, festivals, houses, club, and then into containers and manufacturing and things like that. And during the interview, Ollie from RA, the journalist, said, so you're going to do any more parties? And we were like, well, actually, we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. We were just kind of idly saying, oh, look, we'll be 20 years next year. So we were thinking about maybe we would have a reunion party. And he said, can we publish that? We were like, yeah, why not? So it went out. It went out. And there was a really surprising reaction. Like a lot of people, their phones were buzzing. So we thought, well, everyone was getting in touch, and suddenly all the social media and was commenting and saying, we should do this. So that's how it happened. So we're like, we'll just do it. We got on the phone, booked a venue, thought about some lineup, put it on sale, and suddenly did like 1,000 tickets in a few days. So that's how that happened. And
so
probably
venue
why
is
we're
booked.
here now. But the venue is, and the lineup is in progress
too, or something like that.
We're having a lot of conversations with all of the people who played at the festivals, some of the headliners, some of the brands, crews. There's a lot of activity going on in the booking department, reawakened booking department. So it's going to be, the lineup will basically be from that 10 years of festivals, and it's going to be really big because we've got a big venue.
One heck of a lot of activity.
Yeah, more to come on that. And it's on the 6th of March. We'll get that in now. 6th of March, 2027.
It's so exciting. It has actually put a bit of a swagger back into our stuff, hasn't it?
Yeah. That's
nice
re-emerged.
Yeah.
Were you surprised when RA reached out to you to off the back of your other business announcements?
Like, you know what? Part of why we're doing what we're doing at the moment is actually a logical progression from all of the raves, festivals, music. I'm sort of slightly stealing George's line from it, but we were always interested in like kind of innovative things. We were always interested in self-starting. We were always interested in like kind of being independent and doing your own thing. Our commercial real estate business is all about providing space for small startups that are like actually doing it. Everybody knows all of the people who have space with us. They're like one-man bands up to businesses that might have like about, our biggest ones have like 8 or 10 employees or something like that. So they're quite small companies, they're small and dynamic. And what the link and like the kind of common thread is people doing things for themselves, really. And so the resident advisor interest in what we were doing was totally consistent. So all of those people who used to rave in their early 20s or maybe older or whatever, a lot of them either founded their own business, worked in creative industries, had their own project, were really ending up being our ideal kind of customer base or people who are interested in what we were doing now. So it was when we sat down and had a chat with the guy from RA, he was interested in what we had for his own stuff, you know, like the media landscape. People require those kind of things that we're making at the moment. So yeah.
It's actually going on from that. There's a kind of like commercial progression because you have like you're running festivals, then you need a venue, so you rent a warehouse, and then warehouses have uses other than raves, so you start renting out space to people and creative businesses, and then warehouses became very expensive to renovate, so we started manufacturing spaces. But so there's a commercial progression, but there's also like Alex says, there's a kind of like I guess like a vibe progression. So like the electronic music industry, the scene is full of like kind of creative people, isn't it? And full of like, self-start, like Alex says, self-starters, like people doing their projects. I saw this really old TV clipping, like interview with Weatherall from years ago, where he said something like, the most interesting things that happens at rave isn't actually at the rave, it's in the after party afterwards. Everyone just sits around chatting and talking about starting record labels and t-shirt printing companies and all this. And it's like, like a lot of the people who rent space from us are, have their own projects, right? And that's why they need space. So there is that other kind of connection. So it kind of, it didn't surprise me that RA were interested in it because it's quite consistent with probably what a lot of the stuff that their readership is interested in. A lot of the
Let's
stuff
not
that they
forget
do,
as well, like loads of stuff that we were doing around raves, like the music is obviously like the kind of core part of it. But what people like George and I were really involved with, delivery, logistics, promotion, sound systems, the production, like all the rest of it, there was an enormous amount of like stuff and creative stuff all like happening around it that isn't just like the guy in the studio who's part of it. And I think that people really relate to that, like whether it's free parties and getting in a truck and going out and doing their own thing, or renovating a warehouse into a club or something like that. I think that that's like that common thread is the self-starting, the innovation. You know what I'm saying?
It's a creative thing, and like and there was an awful lot. I mean, an awful lot of stuff other than music involved in running all of it. Design is quite a big part of it, just for the promotional stuff and logistics and practical things, which we've carried over definitely. Skills that we've kind of carried over into kind of different industries. I was about to say more grown up industries, but that makes me sound old. Like it is a different skill set associated with like construction and buildings and stuff like that, but a lot of the skills that you learn kind of doing events like carry over.
And when we get on to talking about all of the big crisis stuff that you asked about, why we ended up doing this interview, a lot of like those kind of factors were what was driving that venue in 2012 in the London Pleasure Gardens. This was part of its appeal, that it had so much like logistics, building, like really pushing the envelope for all of the infrastructure that it was going to deliver. And that was part of the thing that was really attractive. And that was part of what everybody bought into with it.
Delivering a vision, basically. Yeah. Or trying to deliver a vision.
So it does. I mean, the way you've described it, kind of, there is quite a significant thread that runs through it all. And it does make next year more than just a comeback as well. We'll sort of move on to that because, as you say, this is the first time you've been able to really be able to have the human conversation around all of this for something that was, 14 years ago now.
We've never spoken about 2012 in public, or certainly not on record. This is the first time apart from the statement we made at the time, written statement published, we've not spoken about it publicly because no one's actually asked us to talk about it for one reason. So
That's the main reason.
main reason. We've been on panels and conference stuff and talked, you mentioned it or whatever, but we've never actually gone on record and sat and been interviewed about it. So that's an exclusive in a way, but it is 15 years on, so still remember it.
Before we kind of move into that actual part of it. Well, tell me a little bit how you started, and also when was the part where it stopped feeling like you were taking a gamble with it all and it actually started to feel like a career?
I guess I'll answer to start with. We started it in fields and woodland and beaches and stuff with like generators and sound, like kids, like teenagers, like in the growing up in the countryside. We grew up in what was quite a remote part. It's kind of bit busier now that we're older, but when we were kids,
really changed. Where we grew up has really changed.
It was a backwater basically, and it's now quite popular with tourists and whatever. But it was like, there wasn't a lot going on, so we had to make our own fun. It was like, I guess, the early 2000s. So we're kind of like, it's like the 90s wasn't that long before. It was definitely the kind of like echo of the 90s what we grew up in. And we were like 16 in year 2000, and going out on the weekends and putting small sound systems and lighting a fire and generator and just having a kind of rave for 100 people. That was kind of how we used to amuse ourselves, or go to other people's ones, but we started doing it ourselves. Took that fairly far actually. In the end, we started being involved in these like multi-rig things in Thetford Forest and stuff like that, and that led to doing club nights, because it was a way that we could do that, kind of monetize it, so that we could pay to go to pay our way through uni and stuff like that. And we both, Alex and I, had club promotions at university, and then it kind of came to the end of university, and we actually got nicked. We were doing an illegal rave in Thetford Forest, and we were arrested. We were released without charge, I hasten to add. So it was like, in case anyone was wondering how I get a visa to travel, like it wasn't like that big a deal. It was just we were teenagers, and they just like, no, you can't have a rave, and so shut us up for a little bit and let us out. And then after that, we were like, no, we're not doing this anymore. We kind of, I think we're too old for this, age 19. By the end of university, we resolved we were either going to like try and get a job, or make a career of like licensed, take the club nights a bit further. And so we used to go to this festival called Deadbeat, which a lot of people listening to this might remember. I think there were 4 or 5 editions of it, and it was in holiday resorts in Norfolk. So we loved it. We used to go, I think we were a little bit less than 18. We used to go to that. And that was definitely the template, inspiration, whatever. When Deadbeat finished, for whatever reason, they stopped doing it. We booked the venue that it had most recently been held in like a year or two before, and did the first, so 2007, which will be 20 years next year. We did the first festival, and I suppose that is the point at which Alex and I began to live off it. As in, that was, there was enough. We sold 2,000 tickets at like,
that was 2006 going into 2007.
Yeah, and I suppose, Alex, that's when you quit your graduate job you'd had very briefly. I just didn't like get a post-university job. We just lived off that, and that was enough money then for us as 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds to live. We were very young, right? We were like we were like 21, 22.
So we did. Right? Yeah, that's right. The bit that was like kind of in the back, so we were like rural kids, and there's only like there are 2 trains in Norfolk. One goes to King's Cross and one goes to Liverpool Street, and we used to get the one that went to Liverpool Street when we were really young. And through this sort of accident of geography, pretty much, because it would take us 2 hours to get the bus to Norwich and then 2 hours to get the train, so it like took us 4 hours to go clubbing. But when we got on the train, it dumped us in the middle of Shoreditch in like the year 2000, which was just so brilliant. There was so much stuff going on then that we felt that we were getting like this sort of like futuristic urban culture, and all of the records that were from like By-Wire Records, and we would go to Wang, and we went to 93 Feet East and all the rest of it, and then come back to the countryside with all of this like kind of idea. So we had a bit of a bridge between rural DIY and urban warehouse, like kind of not squat but not. And that was like our kind of foundation in the culture that we tried, with sort of varying degrees of success, to turn into a proper business via club nights, and then eventually the Weekender. Yeah. And the Weekender was like a kind of leap of faith, but we had the attitude that if you build it, they'll come. And we took it, we were so idealistic and we were so dedicated to like the roots of it and the belief of it. And we genuinely, we had this house in Brighton, like really, really kind of dilapidated old thing. You used to have the ground floor of it was a shop, and above it in the living room, we got all of George's records and we laid them all out on the floor like a kind of mosaic. And we were like, they'll play, we'll get them. And that was how we did it. And I think that people responded to it really well. And it really set the template for Bloc being like really quite interactive and really quite community led. And it had very, very dedicated fans, like right from the outset, right from 2007. And it had dedicated fans that really, really believed in it, and dedicated fans that really were like a part of it. And I think that I was quite, we recognized that like right from the start, because we're not like a band, like kind of being on stage and people say it's a rave that has loads of people at it. And so people felt like it belonged to them, and they were right about that. And I think
What do you think it was? What attracted that level of fandom? Was it, did you know a lot of these people personally, or was it just that
definitely knew a lot of people, or like the kind of core of it personally? I mean, we were out and about a lot, but I don't know whether or not I had 2,000 best friends. But I think that the holiday park really responded to it, really like let people all like kind of live together. The lineup was really unusual in that, because it meant so much to us, it meant so much to a lot of other people as well. Like there were a whole load of like really dedicated fandoms that we were tapping into with all of that without even really realizing it. And I think that once you activate that, this is before social media like kind of really took off as well. So you had a whole load of like silos almost of like people who really, really believed in something, that were all coming together and they were meeting one another. And like, especially you had people who traveled from Malta and people who traveled from Ireland, who had these incredibly similar, like kind of cultural experiences, but completely geographically separated. And they like kind of would join together and get hammered and stay awake all weekend and all the rest of it. And they were formative years for us and for everyone, like alongside each other.
I think the choice of genre, the music thing, because it's quite tribal, isn't it, youth culture? And you can identify yourself, or certainly we could, and I think it's always been the case, by the kind of what the scene that you're into and the music you're into. We happen to represent like a bunch of, and this is a fluke, really. It's because, like Alex says, we're from Norfolk. The train to London lands in Liverpool Street. We honestly didn't know where we were when we got there, but it just happened to. We got out. We turned left when we came out of the station because it looked like just as a street, and by complete accident we ended up on kind of Old Street. And in the year 2000, I think we were probably 16 or 17, so 2000, 2001, which was quite kind of happening, right? And the thing that was really popular around there at that time was like electro and techno and all this sort of stuff, which actually where we were from, people were into jungle and like other music,
breakbeat,
and breakbeat and reggae and stuff.
Hard house is the provincial gateway drug to techno.
But we ended up just getting into that music because it's where we ended up kind of just in clubs and pubs and warehouses and stuff. So we had the free party spirit with the music of that part of London at that time, and because that was the music we then got into, like, and the records that we bought from the record shops that we went into, which were in that area of London, we then started booking it, and there's a cult following, isn't there, with that Detroit and stuff. It's like people who are into that sort of thing.
It also gave us like
the
weirdest kind of cultural understanding. There was definitely a period in my late teens when I would have thought that Andy Weatherall was like a kind of god. Like, and I would have expected everyone to like kind of know who, obviously. And then like, it's only like many years later that you kind of recognize that they're pressing like a few hundred records. Not Weatherall, obviously, but yeah.
Our heroes were at the time,
guys that you could hang out with at Wang.
We thought that they were a lot more famous than they actually were. And when we got to meet them, it was like, like this huge honor. And like, we couldn't believe that they actually went to raves too or whatever, or, that you could actually talk to them and stuff. So, but that carried through because, answer to your question about why it gained sort of a cult following. There are people still presumably still out there that have like Bloc tattoos, and maybe they've covered them over now, but it's unusual for a festival for people to get tattoos of the logo that, and multiple people have done that. I've seen the photographs. Why is it? It's not because they love, us personally. It's because they love that music. We happen to subscribe to it. They saw a community that they were, oh wow, we're from Malta, or we're from Ireland, or we're from Belgium, and those people like this too. We're a family, and then it becomes a community thing, and that explains it. It's like a cult movie, isn't it? Like we're able to get this kind of cult following for the brand just simply because we're all subscribed to this particular kind of type of electronic kind of music.
And it was a bit dogged. We would send out every Christmas we would send out a Christmas card, like a handwritten Christmas card to everyone. Do you remember doing that? Like,
we used to post
What,
We
to
used to-
your
flyer and a note.
artist or
to the mailing list. Yeah, we'd get
we
together
used
in
to
George's
do a
living room.
postal mailer, which
We did a postal mailer and like
religiously.
It was which we did religiously. We thought it was like just a really important thing to do. We'd post out a flyer and it would have like a little thing
Happy
about
Christmas.
just to everyone Happy Christmas to everyone who was on the mailing list. You asked like when did it become a career? Like it became a career when we first started paying it, but that's essentially quite trivial. It's when it went beyond being a career and actually became a lot more about who we were. Now it's always been called Bloc, but I was saying this to George earlier on. It's always been called Bloc, but basically like it's Alex and George's like knees up sort of thing. Like it just became so entwined with who we were. Yeah, like there's no way that I'm not on almost everybody's phone who I know is like Alex Bloc. Been wearing the t-shirt since then, and doing it since I was a teenager. It was it just became, and because as it became more and more well known, it was utterly indivisible from our own like kind of identities and sense of self. Yeah, and especially
in a way
our 20s.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, in a way that a corporate, sort of not, nothing there's anything wrong with corporate festivals at all. In fact, they can deliver incredible things, but it just so happens this was quite a personal company because two guys ran it and there wasn't really anyone else involved, and that definitely affected the way that it was run and the way that
The whole thing and the whole thing, like I was saying earlier, is all built on groups of friends. Like all of our mates ran it. We were friends with everyone who did it. We were extended friends with everyone we sold tickets to. Like the blurring between it being like a job and a business and a lifestyle, those boundaries just didn't exist at all.
If you were being really pretentious, you'd say that it was like a craft product, I suppose. It sounds really wanky, and I wouldn't want to say that about it. But in that way, it kind of was, because it was like something that we did personally for like a group, like a wider community of people, But happened to then get quite big.
And did it always feel like just you two, or did it feel like you two with this kind of like extended?
Oh, it was
everybody who
absolutely
played friends, and that was the sum of all of Bloc's parts.
Oh, it was all about the extended group, definitely. Like George and I were right in the middle of it, and obviously we made, we did the key stuff, and we were always the directors, like kind of throughout. But the same people worked with us for the decades over it.
Yeah, there was definitely a family running
it.
it. So which just kind of like evolved over time.
Yeah.
So then let's start to move on. So we've had the Weekenders; they've all gone really well. We know we're going to be talking about 2012. Tell me about before that, the bit that year, how that was going, when everything was kind of good, what you've been working on, why that mattered to you. Like everything in the lead up to the event.
Yeah, it was exploding. We got jogged on from Butlins. They couldn't handle it anymore.
2011,
people.
that was
2011. Yeah, that's right.
It was the peak of it. That was like arguably the best year of the whole festival, and the peak of
that was pretty great. It was Aphex, wasn't it? Just on its own.
5 years we'd done, all sold out. This was our new larger venue, the third year in our larger venue. We'd really got the hang of it by this point.
Yeah.
And it was the festival that sold out the quickest. It was the biggest show we ever did. It was the second time we had Aphex to him, but the first time he performed, it was like as part of a kind of more experimental show he did with someone else. This was a full-on Aphex only show. The rest of the lineup was incredible. If you look at it now, I don't know, wouldn't it be possible to book it?
Laurent Garnier closed it, and Laurent Garnier closed out, and then
it was a really good show.
It was a really, really good show, and we drove down. We always had a kind of debrief with Butlins afterwards, and obviously we drove down like kind of returning heroes. It's important to remember actually at the time, like the kind of hubristic feel, because it's going to colour quite a lot of that. But we were like we were sort of on top of the world. We were having like the greatest time. We were late 20s, business going really well. 27, business going really well, and everybody was having like a brilliant time of it. And we were just about to go down to the venue that we were making tons of money for. And we drove down and we walked into the debrief and we didn't even sit down. And these guys were just like, we're not doing it next year. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It was kind of very, very short meeting. Very long drive.
It was the shortest meeting. It was the longest drive down to Somerset, and the shortest,
They just did that thing where, you could like the kind of like look that people give, I think, when they're about to sack somebody, and they kind of like put that
exactly.
serious face, and it's like, so we had some issues and X number of hospitalizations and this number of arrests, and I'm afraid to say that it's the decision of the management of the Butlins Corporation that we will not be hosting the event anymore. And we're like, okay then.
Fuck yeah.
So we just like, okay, well, there's probably not much more to say on the debrief then, is there?
They even got us to leave. They even got us to leave through the side door, didn't they?
Yeah,
Remember
we
that?
sort of,
We
like,
come in through the
walked out.
front and they
Wow.
like ushered us out.
And
I was like, there was no need for that. They built a side door.
They do actually lovely people, and
They really
I
are.
could
They
tell,
really,
I
really
could
are.
tell that they felt really bad doing it, like in the way that you do feel bad if you sack someone, you know. And they didn't enjoy it at all, but they had to just give us the boot, and because it couldn't. It was a victim of its own success. It was wild that year. It was wild, and they just couldn't. They were just like, no more. So we walked. I'll never forget this. I looked at Alex. He looked at me and he said, "Well, that went well." We just burst, for some reason. We both just burst out laughing. We had to we got kind of a fit of the giggles. We had to sort of run down the corridors. They couldn't hear us pissing ourselves because it was just something. Yeah, it was just so catastrophic. We just thought we just had to laugh. We drove back to London. We got really pissed on Stella playing pool, and I didn't know what scratched our heads.
What are we going to do, man?
What are we going to bloody do? So yeah, that was that. That was that.
In the background, in the background, there had been a lot of chatter about the crew from Shangri-La setting up a new venue, and we kind of knew that this thing was happening, didn't we?
Because one of our runners on the team for 2011 was working for them.
That's it.
Or maybe she wasn't a runner. Maybe she was someone on our production team who worked with them on that. And she said during the festival, "Did you realise that the other company I work for, I've got this amazing opportunity. They've been given a lease and a license and some budget, and they are building this mad venue. And not only that, but they're cool. They do the late night part of Glastonbury, Shangri-La." Yeah, the kind of naughty corner they call it, the bit that goes on, to the morning. I think I don't know, it's different now, but at the time that was also really popular with people who like raving. And you should talk to them because they're looking for festivals to book onto this land, and it's next summer. And we were like, that's fascinating, cool. We were at the time, because it was during the 2011 event, we thought maybe we could do another one, So when after that meeting with Butlins, we were just like, I know. What about that venue that our team member mentioned? Maybe we're fucked, right? What are we going to do? We haven't got a venue for our festival, and it's at the peak of its power, but we don't have anywhere to hold it. So we'll just try that. I mean, that sounds amazing, and it means we can do a bigger capacity. We can get bigger headliners. Let's give it a go, and maybe we'll just have to move the festival to that. And to put it, Butlins are going to do it again.
To put it all into context as well, it was 2011. This new venue was part of London's Olympic bid and London's Olympic staging. The way that it was part of it was that all of East London was being developed, and this is like a kind of meanwhile use. Energy and optimism in London at that time, the backing from public bodies, the loans that were made available by Newham Council, and also combined with the fact that Bloc was doing really well, the drive towards it was almost overwhelming. And as soon as we kind of latched into it, we made the contact, everything just felt like it was like a freight train, and it was all destined to happen. And we just kind of got on that train, and we contracted really early. We were the first people who contracted with the venue, and we thought that was a major coup. And we were really happy about it. And that was how it all began.
Yeah, that was how it began. It was, as you can see from the context of it, it was an incredible opportunity for the festival to grow. And it was also like a silver lining to a terrible cloud, because we were we were a bit lost really, because we didn't know how we were going to continue the festival, because the Bloc was kind of quite intertwined with that venue and the format as well. The weekender and the chalets, and we loved that. We wouldn't have chosen. We would have just done a 2012 at Butlins had we been able. But we had to find a new venue, and this just seemed like the obvious thing to do. So there was a lot of kind of goodwill and enthusiasm to give this a go and to take it to the next level. And there was obviously, like Alex says, the same energy was being carried forward across the whole of the capital at the time, because the country was preparing for this major event, and we were just slotting in. It's 2 weeks before the Olympics onto a bit of land that was being developed, regenerated in the name of that overall project. So all in all, it was just it seemed like a very positive move, and we were kind of excited to take advantage of it.
Amazing lineup. Was that easy to book? And it's also easy, right?
It was no, it definitely wasn't. So we just out of interest. So this is going to be a little bit more technical and kind of industry specific, but it's worth explaining exactly how it got set up. Yeah, we had always essentially kind of dry hired Butlins, and Bloc was a bookings and promotions kind of vehicle, and we would run our stages, and we ran all the production and all the rest of it, but the bricks and mortar, and the bars and stuff were run by Butlins, and we took that model to the new venue. Yeah, so we saw it as a promotion and marketing challenge, and that we had secured our venue with our contract and everything that was going to be delivered. We'll come back onto whether or not we were right to do it like that, but that was how we did it, and so that's what was set up. We felt that we had a huge story to tell. So we had a big promotions and marketing challenge, and that was what we focused on, pretty much. So we got venue locked in, tick, that's done. That would have been in the kind of later stages of 2011. And then we had to convince all of the people that had supported us for so long at the Weekender that this was a really, really good option. And then we had to go to all of our partners and all the people who had booked as artists. Anybody who knows about booking knows that it's very territory specific. London is obviously a very, very competitive territory. And we had to go and make the case. Really, really serious people who look after really, really serious artists and say, these established festivals that exist, you could put your artists with them, but don't do it because we're the new thing. We're really exciting. Come with us instead. And that was what we really, really poured our hearts into. And we ended up with a really, really killer lineup.
Yeah, just so that people understand the setup, because it is relevant. I mean, it's not the most important thing, but it matters. The vision, the concept for London Pleasure Gardens was that it was a pre-built festival site, so that it would have all of the the power and all of the lighting and all of the emission control and all of everything ready, and some permanent buildings on site, albeit. Well, they're kind of buildings, semi-permanent buildings, like the O2 Arena, kind of canvas buildings that are there for decades. And that promoters like us, or Field Day, or London festivals could book that instead of a park, because so that you didn't have to do all of this temporary infrastructure. You could just come in, have your event in this pre-made thing, which is actually like Butlins basically, but without the chalets, and that would work. It would kind of in and out, kind of like a really, really overblown club basically. And that was the contract that we signed anyway, was that we were kind of slotting into that, and that we would have event management responsibilities, huge production responsibilities, in terms of what goes on the stages, but the rest was Butlins or a club. It was handled by the licensee and the venue operators, and we would have our security, they would have their security, and we'd kind of run it in parallel. In the end, it didn't work out that way, but that was the concept behind it. And so what we focus all our energy on is what we've been doing for sort of 5 or so years, which is just booking the best lineup we could. And like Alex says, it wasn't easy, but that did go well. The bookings and the sales and stuff went very well. We managed to get over the kind of initial negativity of leaving our holiday resort venue and overcome the difficulty of booking artists for London. We booked this, that went brilliantly up until the event, So we did get the lineup.
Well until it didn't.
We got the headliners, and it sold out, and that was good. Although it was challenging, it was successful in that up to the point that it occurred.
And then let's move into that point then. So what happened, and what was the point for you where it went from things being good until less good?
It was clear. I think George keeps on saying this, I'm remembering all of his good lines for this podcast, but when there's a big failure, specifically talk about airplane crashes or something like that, it's never because one thing went wrong. It's because a lot of different things went wrong. And in hindsight, looking back at how the arrangement was set up for London Pleasure Gardens, it was a very, very flawed structure. And we should have clocked that it was a flawed structure from the outset, but we didn't. Because we were contracting. I mean, we can look at a lot of the different kind of areas that went wrong, but because we were contracting a venue that hadn't been built yet, that was the kind of original sin of the whole thing. And just at the point at which it really commercially took off and we were selling lots of tickets, it became increasingly apparent that the build schedule hadn't been met. And the build schedule not being there meant that the larger venues would not be provided, and they had to be re-provided in a plan that was made on a limited space of the site that was made available to us.
Yeah, so we'll go more into the detail in a moment. I think that it's what we're going to do is explain how it happened, right? But in doing so, we're probably going to say, talk about lots of things that we're arguably beyond our control or whatever. But before we do that, I think it's really important that we say, even though it's 15 years later, we do recognize that it was our event, the buck stops here, and that we could have decided just not to run it, for instance, at various points along the way. That 15,000 people went out that night. At best, they had a shit night out. The service was not delivered, and it took them a very long time to get the refund. And at worst, they had a very unpleasant experience. It was scary and it was potentially dangerous, and we remain sorry about that. It was a source of deep regret and sorrow at the time. We apologise for it. We feel the same way, and ultimately it was our gig. We are responsible for it, and we're sorry for that, and we still are. But having said all of that, the refunds were made available. Most people got them, and of course, no one was hurt. No one was injured, and thankfully nobody died. And I think if that hadn't been the case, that's the most important thing, right? Had that not been the case, we probably wouldn't even be talking about this now, certainly not with this tone. So that's kind of how we continue. That's how we feel about it, and that's what we would always say about it. But equally, if you want to go into, we're going to now go into detail how that happened. Yes, a lot of it was stuff that believe me, if we could have changed it, we would have done. But to some extent, the die was cast, and we made certain decisions to continue and show must go on kind of thing. And arguably, we possibly shouldn't have done. We should have decided just weeks before, just pull out, but we didn't. And as part of a wider team with the venue and the local authority, we attempted to deliver this event in this slightly flawed format, believing that it was possible and that it was going to be successful. And it turned out that setup that we ended up with was flawed, and that's why we had to evacuate it. I just think it's important to say that, because a lot of this stuff, otherwise it's what we're saying as well, these people did this and this is, and it was up to us, and we could have just not done it. But what actually, if you don't mind me carrying on, Alex, go on just to go on with what you were saying, basically there's a multiple problems which combined, just it's never one thing, is it, with something like this, and those problems became apparent to us as we got closer to the date, right? So we had this July the 6th date, and in the spring, we were seeing that they were getting this site ready. It was an old dock, Royal Victoria Dock, a disused industrial land, an abandoned building on it, amazing venue, like the backdrop of the water of the dock. A lot of land, 30 acres, a huge bit of land. And they were building it. They were building the venues, they were preparing the ground, they were putting in the electrical and all this sort of stuff. But it did seem, even 6 weeks out or whatever, or 2 months out, like it was like, like a lot of construction projects, they do overrun, right? I think the only one that didn't overrun was the Olympic Stadium itself. But these guys they did seem a bit behind schedule, and they were encountering their own problems. They just discovered some contamination in the land that they had to cover to make it safe, and that put them back by weeks. And there were multiple problems that they encountered, and those, I guess, were beyond their control. But as we got closer to the date, these things were piling up. It's like, well, this isn't finished, that isn't finished, and we had a plan. We had like you have an event management plan, we had a drawing, we had a site plan, we had a design, we had a crowd control, crowd flow, and all these things set up. And 2 weeks before the festival, this was, I suppose, in answer to your original question, the moment at which we probably knew this is going to be very challenging to deliver. The second stage, which was like a big, like a mini O2, basically, kind of a big dome, which was going to be there permanently. They just weren't going to be able to build on time, And we asked if we could just use the land that it was on, because that would I said, don't worry about the building. We'll just, as a concrete platform, we'll just put a big marquee and we'll have a second stage there. But they didn't want to do that. And the reason was that it was basically it was under construction, and to take down the construction and use the land would have put that completely sort of thrown that schedule. And then the venue wouldn't have been ready for the Olympics. So this is the point, I suppose, when we should have said, well, hang on, if we can't have the second stage in that location, albeit with a different kind of tent, we can't really do the show, because it's, it's just, that's important. It's the location of the second stage. And they said, they held firm, the venue held firm. They didn't want to miss the Olympics. They were going to fence off that corner of the site. And bear in mind, it's a very big site, but, the kind of attractors, the headlines were going to be on one end of it, whatever. So what we did is we sat down, scratched our heads with our event management team. We redesigned the site. We presented the new design to the SAG, like the licensing authorities and the council.
SAG
who were involved
in safety advisory group.
Yes, the safety advisory group, which is a kind of like a committee that's where you have everyone sits down and gets together before a big event. And the plans were presented and agreed, and we proceeded on the basis that the site that was going to work with the new design.
That's kind of how
that's the run up to the problem, basically.
That was what the run up to. So when we encountered that challenge, we've gone back over this like so many times, but the motivation at that time when we lost the second stage, we were really locked in to delivering it for everybody. That was what we felt. We did not want to let it all down. And we had, I think the phases like the show must go on. And that like really took over and we really drove it. And every time that there was like a problem was presented, second stage being like, the biggest one, but there were frequently many others. We fixed it with a kind of contingency plan and said, okay, so problem X has been solved, solution Y, that's great. And then we compiled it all together into a plan, all together with this goal of we must deliver the show, this must happen, we want to make it happen. And we always believed that we were going to be able to deliver it. We believed in all of these answers. And, obviously there was a team, but we believed in them. We were pushing it about as hard as it was possible to push, to try to get it over the line. And we really, really felt that we got there. But when it was actually tested on the Friday night, that wasn't what happened.
There were other issues too. Emission control systems that had been designed by the venue, we believed were inadequate. And we did flag this, but there was little we could do in the kind of maelstrom of chaos that the last few weeks leading up to the actual... You bear in mind, this is their first big festival of this kind on the land, right? It's not really clear like whether or not how many people got in, but certainly at one point the gates failed so that people were able to get in without a ticket. We don't really have any data on like whether to the extent to which that happened. And there were other problems too. Like they didn't deliver loads of things. There wasn't actually any power. We had to bring in temporary power and lighting. And the very last minute, a huge amount of stuff had to be scrambled on our side to deliver the event. To the extent that actually, we actually had to, in order to just pay for all of the stuff that we were going to have to put up quickly to do the show, we had to renegotiate our contract with the venue so that the Bloc was able to take the bar revenue, because we just weren't going to have enough money to do it because it was costing suddenly hundreds of thousands of pounds more. Our contract was being breached by them because they weren't delivering the venues that we contracted, and so we just renegotiated. We're like, we'll do it. We'll deal with this because you can't. We'll put up a tent. We'll put the power. We'll do this. Everything we're able to do, we did, and we covered the cost of that by flipping around the bar revenue from them to us. So details like that, it's worth it. That's not that relevant because it's just a commercial thing. But it's to paint a picture of quite how chaotic it was in the weeks leading up to it, and much of that stuff, it was literally beyond our control. But what was in our control, and what I'll probably always regret, or it gives us both pause, is that we could have just decided at some point just to walk, and maybe if we hadn't been 27 or whatever we were, and we were more jaded and like a bit more well weary and wise as we might possibly be now in our 40s, we probably would have just walked away from it, But there was, like Alec, there was a huge amount of goodwill.
I think it's important to recognise it. If you go back to those things that we're describing at the moment of the kind of things that went wrong, we were in like the kind of music festival industry, and we understood those challenges in terms of the challenges which are presented to people who are setting up temporary structures either in fields or music events and all the rest of it. Looking back on what was happening on those sites, it was actually like a kind of construction industry challenge, things like contaminated earth and those kind of build schedules. And they were on a scale of both time and budget that was really outside our like kind of knowledge, really.
Yeah, we do it now. It's what we do now.
We do it now. We didn't do it then. And we felt that those challenges could be overcome in a way that they couldn't. And we do keep on coming back to this. Like the buck does stop with us, but if anybody's interested in like the anatomy of it, then that's really like where it became to come unstuck. And because the plan that was put in place put a lot of those stages very close together, it led to issues.
Yeah, that's. It was the contingency plan. It was activating the contingency plan of redrawing the site, put the second stage too close to the main stage. That was fundamentally, there are a lot, like I said, there were lots of other problems. The emission control thing did not help. But fundamentally, the problem was that we drew up a contingency plan. We relocated the second stage. The new location was just too close to the back of the main stage. So people trying to see the headline act were butting up against people trying to see the second stage act. And there was queuing. The queuing became more than queuing. Yeah. And that's
Shall
dangerous.
we move into that Friday? The role of events as it started from morning onwards. How was that?
Can I just add, before we do, one more detail? Because I think people might be interested in this, and I think it's relevant too. Part of the reason I think that our kind of our sort of good faith desire to deliver trumped everything, was that the team around us, including the venue, our own team, but also the local authority, were very much in favour of this event not failing. And the reason for that was that if this event failed and was pulled and didn't take place at all, it would be extremely bad for this new project. And I'm not revealing anything here because it is a matter of public record, but the local authority, the licensing authority who granted the planning permission, who granted the lease, who granted the license, and who were in charge of the safety advisory group and kind of basically were the overseeing body for this whole thing. They
had
had
funded.
That's the point I'm making. Yet they had made a commercial loan of £3.3 million of Newham council taxpayers' money to the venue, who we were a client of, right? So, and as I say, that's not like a revelation. That's a matter of public record. But, and I'm not saying that caused them to not follow all the various kind of rules and licensing and procedures that they usually would. But certainly the tone of the conversation around delivery was like we were in this together, like this was a team thing. And I think that they wanted this to succeed as much as we did. Yeah. So when we said, look, the beneficiaries of your loan, your tenant, this organization have failed to deliver something, but we think and they think we've drawn up contingency. We think we can do it like this instead, and it will work. I think that they viewed that favorably. They wanted it to happen. I don't know exactly what the decision-making process was, but it is worth noting that this loan had been made, and I know that they didn't want that event to fail. And I think that some people might wonder, why a council would want like a big rave, like in their back garden kind of thing, especially one that was seemingly going a bit wrong because their tenant was failing to deliver. Well, they want it to happen as much as everybody else because otherwise they were going to lose all of this council taxpayers' money. And they did in the end. The venue did go past a few weeks, not long after, and all that money was lost. Yeah. So it did ultimately fail, probably because Bloc failed. But it's part of this bigger picture. How did this happen? Well, there were all these things going on in the background, and that was quite a big. I think that's a relevant detail, but without making any sort of judgment over exactly how it affected decision making.
The fact that it did feel this kind of like swathe of energy, that it wasn't just you guys wanting to push it forward. It felt like this thing that needed to go ahead because
the Olympics
there was so much that was propped
yeah.
But the other events as well that you said were programmed around it, and the noise.
Yeah. There was a whole summer of programming for this venue. Other festivals, other events.
There were many, many other stakeholders that wanted to see it be a success. Success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. Like
that's such a good point. Yeah.
But that was where we were with it. In and amongst all of the other things which were contributing to this being like a very, very disordered start to an event, because Newham Council took control of the board of London Pleasure Gardens, and we had a very, very heated consultant with a management consultant very, very heated discussion the day before the event opened with a management consultant who had been appointed as the managing director of London Pleasure Gardens. And there was a lot of discussion about the running the event, but obviously it was decided that the event was still going to go ahead.
Yeah.
Heated in what way? What were they saying? What were you saying?
It was commercials mainly.
Yeah, it was about
about
the commercials.
Just to explain exactly what Alex means, because this loan was made, the loan came with certain conditions. One of them was that if they lost faith in like the setup, they could come in and enact like a sort of like a debenture, which meant that they could take charge of the company basically, and they did enact that in this few weeks prior to our festival. The authority who'd made the loan enacted this thing. They put someone else in charge. They took over London Pleasure Gardens. The directors, the founders of London Pleasure Gardens, became secondary. Like they were like no longer fully in charge of this organisation. And we then were put in front of this new guy who'd been appointed by the council to try and sort out this mess that they'd see, this kind of try and protect this £3.3 million, I suppose. And yes, he wanted to change various things. He wanted to rip up the deal that we had over the bars and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it was like, all of this stuff was going on in the background. So we had to kind of suddenly had a completely new like manager really on the venue side, which was like, and then he didn't really know, so it was a very, very tricky situation behind the scenes. And yeah, all of this stuff was going on while we were trying to make sure that we could just run this festival and deliver it, safely, which is what we believe we were doing. and in such a way that like that it could happen, and then the rest of the summer calendar would sort of carry on, and we, Bloc would carry on basically. But yeah, it's just this is relevant background. And we've never really spoken about it, but that is what was actually going on, and it was extremely challenging, to have all those late night discussions, while also trying to like sort out this big festival.
And those discussions, was it mostly just the two of you, or was it with
it's the two.
Were there other people around that you could bring in? Were you asking anyone else for advice, or was it just you two looking at what you had in front of you and deciding the way forward at 27?
I think that one of the problems with the way that the organisation had been set up is that we didn't have really, especially when it came towards the management of that very chaotic event, we didn't have properly clear lines of communication. Really, all of those meetings should have been attended by all of the representatives of the people who were on the ground and all of the event managers, and they weren't. We had our own internal security and production operation, and we attended those meetings with the manager of that like kind of internal security and production operation, so that we knew what we were doing as an organisation. But it hadn't been set up so that there was visibility across the whole organisation, and obviously that's a very, very key failure.
Yeah, and actually going back to the structure, this is actually a very good point. When I described that thing of like a really big club and like it's like a festival venue and you can just come in as a promoter and do it, that sounds great, doesn't it? But for events of this size, it's actually not great in a lot of ways, because what happens on the ground is you have we still had to have a security team, we still had to run all the stages, we still had to do some aspects of our ticketing and our admission stuff, but they also had a security team, and they also had the venue management, and they also had, so it's in a club, it doesn't really matter, because the promoter literally just picks the DJs and just hands out some flyers. But when you're running something on this scale, to have the festival, still needed our own team. We still had our own production, and we still had our own security, and we still did a lot of the crowd management and all of that. But they had theirs, and to try and, without a very, very clear tree, which we really didn't have in retrospect, it's very hard to make that work. And that's just yet another. This is like problem number 5 or something that we've mentioned thus far. There are others, but that was the hybrid structure of the pre-made festival venue with its own production, its own security, with another festival plugging into it, is not ideal. And at best, it would have required an awful lot more attention and design than it actually got in these circumstances. So it didn't help, did it?
No, I'm sure that anybody who's listening to this who's an event management professional is kind of,
head in hands.
Head in hands.
As I have. I'm starting to feel anxious now.
I'm starting to get a dry.
I'm just
this is
bring
horrible.
It back.
Reliving it. Yeah.
That's where we'll leave part 1. From building a cult institution, that final surreal drive back from Butlins, getting drunk, playing pool, and just wondering what the hell comes next. They were at the peak of their influence, but they were also at a festival without a home. Part 2 is where it all comes down. We're going inside the night itself, the gate failure, the call to pull it, what it actually looks like the morning after when everything you've built has vanished. I'm Manji. This is the All Gone Wrong podcast. See you in part 2.